Learning goal. The student will know the characteristics of cultural groups of Florida's early history and be able to describe the effects of European colonization in Florida on each group. Turn to page 48. Lesson 2, Spanish Explorers. Explorers from Europe came to the Americas. When they arrived, they met the Native Americans living there. So here's the European explorers. They're shaking hands with the Native Americans right here. There were many Native Americans living in Florida in the late 1400s. Soon Europeans would claim their lands. Dividing the world. This again is called the heading. This tells us what we're going to read about. Europeans and Asians traded with each other. They traded silk, spices, and other items. To get to Asia, most Europeans went east, traveling by land. This route was difficult and dangerous. European explorers wanted to find a quicker, easier way to Asia. In 1492, a sailor named Christopher Columbus sailed across the Atlantic Ocean. He believed he could get to Asia by traveling to the west. The King and Queen of Spain supported him. When he reached land, he thought he was in Asia. In fact, he had landed near Florida. He was on an island that is today part of the Bahamas. Columbus was in a place that Europeans of that time didn't know about. Spain immediately claimed this land. Other countries wanted to control it too. One country was Portugal. Spain and Portugal both wanted control. The conflict was ended by a treaty. A treaty is an official agreement. The Treaty of Tordesillas was signed in 1494. The treaty divided the Western Hemisphere. Portugal got part of South America, and Spain got the rest. Spain also won control of North America, including Florida. Soon, Spain began sending explorers to the Americas in search of riches like gold and silver. Of course, Native Americans were already living there and claimed the land too. So here's a map right here. You have your compass rose, the end pointing north. Then you have east, south, and west. Spain and Portugal are countries in Europe. So here's Spain and Portugal right here, and here's the rest of Europe all here. Up here it says, write about something you think may have happened when Europeans and Native Americans first met. Go ahead, write what you think now, and pause. When you're ready, hit play again. The first explorers. The first European expedition to Florida took place in 1513. An expedition is a journey made for a special purpose. It was led by Spanish explorer and soldier Juan Ponce de Leon. Juan Ponce de Leon. He was searching for riches. He first explored the island that the Spaniards named Puerto Rico. Then he sailed north and found land. He named it La Florida, or the place of flowers. Free and enslaved Americans also came to Florida. Juan Garrido was an African explorer who lived in Spain and sailed to the Caribbean. He first joined Ponce de Leon in Puerto Rico. Then, when Ponce de Leon landed in Florida, Garrido was there too. Historians think he may have been the first free African in the Americas. Number 1. Spain and Portugal controlled different parts of the Americas. Write Portugal and Spain in the boxes on the map to show what they controlled. So here, who controlled North America and who controlled down here? It says the Treaty of Tordesillas drew a line that divided the Americas. Land east of the line, right here, line east of the line, east is this way, belonged to Portugal, and land west of the line belonged to Spain. So go ahead, fill that out. Pause it, and then continue when you're ready. Exploring Florida. By the early 1500s, Spain wanted to explore the Americas even further. The Spaniards had two main reasons for exploring. They were looking for gold, silver, and other riches. They also wanted to spread Christianity to the Native Americans. In 1521, Ponce de Leon returned to Florida with 2 ships and 200 Spanish settlers. Settlers are people who move to a new place and decide to live there. Ponce de Leon hoped to start a farming colony on the southwest coast. A colony is a settlement ruled by another country. The Calusa already lived on the land, however. The two groups fought. Ponce de Leon was wounded. The settlers abandoned their plans for a colony. They went to Cuba, where Ponce de Leon later died from his wound. So right here it says, even on the very old maps, the peninsula of Florida is visible. So right here, here's Florida right here. Remember, the peninsula is down here, and the panhandle would be up here. Number 2 says, mark the line of longitude shown on the map that is closest to Florida. So here's your key. This is the way that Ponce de Leon traveled. So you can follow the arrow here is where he traveled. And then Narvaez in 1528, he's the green one. And then the red was De Soto, 1539 to 1542. Map shows present-day borders. So this is what we know the borders look like today, and this is the way they traveled. So go ahead and mark the line of longitude shown on the map that is closest to Florida. Which line is longitude? Is it one of these or is it one of these? Pause and continue when you're ready. Trying to build colonies. The King of Spain continued to send explorers to Florida. He wanted them to build colonies on land west of Florida. In 1528, Panfilo de Narvaez landed near present-day Tampa Bay. His crew was made up of both Spaniards and Africans. His ship sailed north. He and his crew continued walking. When they reached their meeting place, the ships weren't there. The ships had gotten lost. Narvaez and his men were on their way. They built their own rafts and tried to sail to Mexico. All the rafts were lost at sea. Narvaez died. Only 4 men survived the expedition. One survivor was Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca. Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca. De Vaca wrote about his experiences. That is how historians know about Panfilo de Narvaez's expedition. Another survivor was Esteban Dorantes. Dorantes was an enslaved African. He is thought to be the first African to explore a large part of the Americas. Dorantes, De Vaca, and the other 2 survivors knew there were Spanish settlements in Mexico. They explored for years. Then they finally reached the settlements in Mexico. Spanish explorer Hernando de Soto landed in Tampa Bay in 1539. He came with more than 600 people and many supplies. De Soto was looking for gold. He searched for months and did not find any. He and his army left Florida. They never returned. De Soto and his men were, however, the first Europeans to see the Mississippi River. In each box, write the last name of the explorer. So, who was separated from his ships and died at sea, who landed in Tampa Bay, later left Florida and found the Mississippi River. This guy named Florida, and he later died in Cuba from a wound. So go back in here, reread, or re-listen to me, and fill in the blanks here to find out who did this. You can look for the key words. Separated from the ships and died at sea. Who died at sea? Who left Florida and found the Mississippi River? Who named Florida and died in Cuba from a wound? Go back on these pages. When you're finished filling it out, you may continue. A difficult relationship. Some explorers did not treat Native Americans well. They were cruel to many of the Native Americans. As a result, the Native Americans fought back. Groups like the Timucua, Apalachee, and Cluso weren't afraid to defend their land. Both Native Americans and Spaniards were killed during these conflicts. The Spaniards had weapons and strong armor. However, the Native Americans had bows and arrows and found ways to attack the Spaniards with them. These fights reduced the Native American population. The diseases brought by Europeans reduced the population further. Many Native Americans died from smallpox and measles. They could not fight these new diseases. Cultural exchange. Native Americans and Europeans, both Spaniards and the French, exchanged things related to their cultures. For example, Europeans brought new animals from Europe. They brought pigs, horses, chickens, and cattle. They also carried metal tools and weapons. Europe gained things from the Native Americans in both North and South America, too. Foods like tomatoes, corn, turkey, and pumpkins were new to Europeans. Number 4, categorize. Write some of the things that the Europeans and Native Americans exchanged. So right here it says Native American and European exchange. From the Americas to Europe. So what came from the Americas and traveled to Europe? Write them down here. What traveled from Europe to the Americas? Write them down here. Let's take a look up here. It says Native Americans shared plants and animals that were new to Europeans. Oh, the Native Americans, they were living in America, and they shared plants and animals that were new to Europeans. Interesting. And down here it says Europeans brought many plants and animals that were new to the Americas. So let's look at these photos. What matches with this? You can write it in this chart here. Pause when you're ready, continue. Spain loses interest. Spain sent explorers to the Americas in search of gold and silver. They found hardly any in Florida. There was gold in Central America and South America, however. Spanish explorers traveled there and brought riches back to Spain. They were more interested in these places than in Florida. Spain tried to start colonies in Florida, but none seemed to succeed. In fact, by 1561, there was not a single Spanish town in Florida. The King of Spain decided to give up on Florida completely. However, not long after that, Spain would have a very good reason to return. Number 5, categorize. In the paragraphs above, underline reasons why Spain lost interest in Florida. So pause that. When you're done, you may continue. You're underlining reasons why Spain lost interest in Florida. Underline the details here. Number 6, summarize. Why did Spanish explorers come to Florida? You're going to write me a sentence or two right here. Tell me, why did the Spanish explorers come to Florida? We just talked about it up here. Number 7, you are living in Spain. The king is sending families to Florida to set up colonies. Would you like to move to Florida? Why or why not? So right here, pretend that you're living in Spain. You're living across the world. You're way over here. Here's America. You're living way over here. The king is sending families to Florida, where you and I live right now, to set up colonies. Would you like to move to Florida? Why or why not? Give me a couple sentences right here.